I want to thank each and every one of you for being here today. I've agreed to share my story of abuse on a public platform for the first time for 3 reasons. The first reason is that I want to warn each and every one of you here today. If you are not a victim of abuse yet, someone else close to you statistically will be, or is already. You just don't know it yet. Now, I was the last person to be beaten by a man. Worse still, to stay with that man, to be repeatedly abused. If you told me 5 years ago, when I had just turned 50, that I am a candidate for domestic abuse, I'll tell you what, I probably would have laughed in your face. So take heed today and be warned. The second reason, I believe that the wall of silence has to come down. So many of the friends close to me said, Elna, just shut up, don't tell your story. Why do you do this? Move on already. And for heaven's sake, just don't write that book of yours. People don't want to be associated with an abused woman, least of all a corporate client. But you see, it is this wall of silence that has perpetuated this dark secret throughout the ages. And generations of families are protecting a lineage of predators. Toxic organizations and old boys clubs rely on our silence in order to continue the sexual abuse and the workplace abuse. What is happening in our homes is happening everywhere in our society, in our schools, in our churches, and in our police force. In one of the Holy Scriptures, it is written that we shall inherit the sins of the fathers in the third and the fourth generation. And I believe it is so because we are remaining silent. The third reason why I'm speaking today is I believe that every story counts and every life matters. Perhaps the only courageous amongst us is that abused child, the abused woman, and often the abused man. They who have no voice, they who have already lost their lives. Let's make every life matter. And on this note, I would like to ask any one of the ladies here in front, won't you just light this candle for us? And with us lighting this candle, the hope is that us being together here today will be the start of breaking down the wall of silence and stop the violence. So here is my story. 5 years ago, I was a strong, confident, financially independent, single professional woman. I was divorced for 16 years already. And arguably, I think I had the best talent management job in the entire South Africa. I loved that job, every aspect of that job. I was surrounded by a most amazing team of people. And I miss the people that I work with so much. I traveled a lot, the job was paying well, and I loved traveling. And so here you can see some of the destinations that I went to. I had just finished building my dream home in the green Kalahari. It was a sanctuary of peace and tranquility. I had moved on from being a political activist in my young days, and now I was advocating for women at work, in particular women in mining. And here I was making a speech to 350 women in mining. Now here is the crux of the story. At the time that I was making the speech in August 2014, 3 weeks prior, I had met the man who would turn me into an abused woman statistic within months after this speech. In fact, I was rehearsing the speech to him the weekend before. Little did I know that 9 months later, I would be crawling on the kitchen floor covered in my own blood. Please hear me. 9 months later after the speech, I was crawling on the floor in my own blood. It was a Saturday evening. He was watching a movie, and I was so relieved because all day long he was going through an emotional roller coaster. But now he was calm and he was watching a movie. I was sitting on the kitchen tabletop, minding my own business, pottering around. He walked into the kitchen, walked straight up to me and said, "I feel like hitting you." It's a joke, guys. So jokingly, I said to him, "Well, if that's going to make you feel better, maybe you should." Little did I know what was to follow. After all, I grew up in a loving, caring family where my father and mother never once had conflict in front of us. The first time that I saw my mother and father disagree was when I was first at university and they were disagreeing about me. So I got up, just wanting to move around him to exit the kitchen. But as I moved around, suddenly something hit me right here. And there was just this excruciating burning sensation as my lip burst open. My mind couldn't understand what had just happened. But as I turned to him and I caught his eyes, I could see that his entire demeanor had changed. Now, he was an amateur boxer. So the next moment, the next fist hit me right in the chest and sent me against the opposite wall of the kitchen. And as I hit that wall, all the air was taken from my lungs. And as I went down and came up, gasping for air, the next fist hit me straight in the chest and sent me about 2 to 3 meters into the back door. As I hit the back door and came down, my head hit the handle and cracked my skin at the back of my head open by this much. I fell to the floor. And you know, these wounds bleed profusely, so this is blood everywhere. He was screaming and shouting at me, telling me how pathetic I am, how he should never have allowed me into his life, and how I need to get out now. I was on that floor. It felt as if 1,000 alarm bells went off in my mind. Get out! Get out! Get out! But I was trying to rationalize, trying to understand, explain to myself, what is happening? What is happening? What is happening? But nothing was making sense. And so I found myself trying to crawl past his feet, but he kept on blocking the way. All I wanted was to get to the garage door. And I started pleading and I said, "Please let me go, please, I want to get out. I'll leave you, I'll never come back, just let me out, I want to get out." What I did not know, and I only learned that later, is that you never tell a predator that you want to leave him or that you're willing to go. He wants you to leave, but that's not what he wants to hear. He wants to hear the opposite. And so as I was carrying on about wanting to leave, he was getting more and more agitated. And he said to me, "I'll rather kill you and kick you to death on this kitchen floor today before you will see the light outside that garage door." At that moment, I instinctively just pulled into the fetal position. And I found myself intuitively, or by luck, or by grace, change what I'm saying. And I started saying to him, "I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry that I'm so useless. I'm so sorry that I make you so unhappy. Please give me another chance. I love you. I will make it right." And you know, The very next moment, he stooped over me as if nothing ever happened. And he said, "Here, take my hand." And he pulled me up and he said, "Look at you, you're such a mess. Go clean yourself up." Now listen, this is the next thing. You know what I felt in that moment? I felt grateful. I felt thankful because he had saved my life. And on the way to the bathroom, I so much just wanted to sit down because my legs were shaking. And as I headed for the couch, I remember him saying, "No, don't sit down, you're going to mess it up with your blood." But I didn't hear that. I was just grateful. My life has been saved. And I walked into the bathroom, got lots of toilet paper, couldn't clean myself off neatly, but at least I came out with the lots of toilet paper, and I sat down on the couch. And I'll tell you what, I don't know how long we were there together, but it was close to midnight. And there's nothing going on in my brain. Nothing. But in the time frame that we sat there for however long or short it was, he said to me, first he started by saying, "Why did you cause this? Are you stupid or what? You never tell a man to hit you. This is all your fault. Look at you now. You never challenge a man." But slowly as we're sitting there, he started saying, "Look, I'm really sorry. I should never have hit you like that. I really hurt you badly. Look, this relationship is not going to work. It's night time now. In the morning, you need to pack your things and go." I asked him, I remember asking him, "Have you ever done this before?" And he said immediately, "Yes, I did." He said, "But you know, it was in the 3-year relationship before you, and I only hit her once, but I was drunk." In the morning, when I woke up, I had already forgiven him totally. I said to myself, surely his remorse is genuine. And here's a man deeply in trouble, and all he needs is true love. And after all, I had given up everything. And here I am. And maybe this is what I need to do now, just to love him. Now, in the aftermath, after this incident, for many, many months, he maintained that he's only hit me once with his fist. He also said that when he gets that angry, he cannot remember a thing. The doctor's report stated very clearly that I had severe bruises to the front and the back, a slight bruise here, and that I had a cut here and a huge cut here. This, at the back of my head, it got infected, and I wasn't able to lie down to sleep for 6 weeks. I sat up in bed. He later on, when we were with our 4th therapist, relayed a story to that therapist in such detail of what went down while he was abusing me, that I was astounded that he could remember so much detail. And that incident, where he told things with so much detail, I suddenly realized for the first time just how calculated, how callous, and how premeditated the predator's mind really is. And that final account at that 4th therapist also finally helped me to leave him. But that, guys, that was 2 years later. After that first assault, the violence just escalated. I'm not going to tell you all the detail, but increasingly he was telling me how he would kill me, and he will make it look like an accident, and he will never do his dirty work himself, he said. He made very, very clear that I understood where his contacts are, who the people are, and how it would go down. He never, after that first assault, needed to hit me quite as hard again. All he needed to do was just to come with his fist. And that would be enough to send me into fear like you cannot believe. Or he just needed to attack me. Just so that I could get the message. or he just needed to slap me hard enough so that I skid across the floor. And that would set the table for the emotional abuse that would follow. Often just for hours, but there were days and nights that he kept throughout the night and throughout the day, on and on with emotional abuse. During these times, he would deprive me from water and food, from access to my cell phone, permission to phone my daughter, permission to visit my friends, permission to practice my profession, and permission to practice the sport that I would like to do, or the art form that I would like to do. I always needed to do what he's doing and be with him. Afterwards, he would give these privileges back to me, piecemeal by piecemeal. And always I was so grateful. I was so grateful that I got these privileges back. And now quickly, I can go and finish my psychometric assessments because the deadline is tomorrow. And I would work throughout the night the moment he's asleep, just to get my reports. I married this violent man in July 2015, just 11 months after I met him. By then he had already abused me for months. I left him in April 2017. I got a lifetime court interdict against him. Not that that helps much in the society that we live in. 6 months after I left him, we got divorced. From hearsay, I believe that by that time, an anaesthetist had already moved in with him. She was just another professional in a long stream of abusive relationships, including his 20-year abusive marriage to a financial accountant. On the day the lawyer called me on a Friday in October to tell me that our divorce has come through, the marriage has been annulled, I received an email telling me that I have lost my entire life savings and all my pension in a pyramid scheme that is folded. I had entrusted all my finances to this man's financial control and advice. For today's interaction, I'm not going to tell you all the stories of the police interaction that I had and how I asked the police to come to our house. I'm going to leave out all the times that I asked the security control cars to please stay close to the house. In fact, just park outside the house. And during the night, please listen. If they hear anything, just be close by so that when I come out, they can help me. There were many times that I went to church and sought help from the elders. Many nights I stayed over at his mother's place. I put myself into B&Bs and stayed out for some time. I also slept in my car, in the park in Dunvegan Gardens, Edenvale, often. But in the morning, I would be back, before he wakes up, more determined than ever before to make this work. You see, in my mind, I argued that if I can fix this, I would never have to tell the story. No one would ever know, and we would live happily ever after. I thought that love would conquer this dark side of this man. Surely true love can do that. I think I also had a good dose of religious duty. I believed that I needed to forgive him time and time again. After one of our incidents, he invited one of Shepherd Bushiri's leaders to our house late one evening. And he left me and this leader on our own. And the first thing that I did was say to this leader, my husband is physically, emotionally abusing me. That man looked at me, there was not a twitch in a muscle in his face. And in that moment I realized that this was like water on a duck's back to this man. And I felt so helpless in that moment. And then he proceeded to start from Genesis in the Old Testament right through to Revelations in the New Testament, and told me verse by verse how I needed to forgive this man and never show any anger and submit to this man because he is the leader of this marriage. But later on, I realized that it was my ego that was keeping me in this moment. I could not concede to the fact that I, a supposedly intelligent professional woman and a psychologist at that, had married this man and couldn't fix him. Now you see, that's what research shows us. That I was acting out the typical victim cycle. This, how I was reacting, is what research shows us is happening. And it's indifferent to your age, to your level of education, to your race, to your sexual preference. It happens when you are the victim. This is how you react, in the same way that I react. And so during that time, I wrote this poem. It's called Living the Lie. This game of Jekyll and Hyde. In one moment, a perfect gentleman, bowing down to church in Christ, pouring on the Holy Spirit's might. The next, his fist draws blood and bruises. This is all your fault, he insists. Plead for mercy, confess your wrongs, or I shall kill you, he shouts. And I confess throughout the night to anything he wants. If I'm still alive by sunrise, I shall leave, I promise myself, now over and over deceived. But in the morning, I stay, inexplicably loyal to a dark side of man. I hang onto a sliver of hope, but the crucifix above our bed already fell and broke. Shame shrouds this marriage. Our few friends, families, church elders and therapists, nobody the wiser as we carry our dishonest secret carriage. More and more I grow into a stranger to myself. Where are my honest to God activist days? How the once courageous, outspoken woman strays. Just months ago I was a professional on a public stage. Now I struggle to hold my own in the private prison cage. And yet, at my own peril I stay in this game. This is my Christian obligation, I claim. I refuse to consider maybe this my ego at play, too embarrassed to admit my own feet of clay. But I fear the day that he will kill me eventually. And yet the prospect of starting all over again often scares me more. And thus the game of Jekyll and Hyde continues. After all, he is the perfect gentleman too. Mary Oliver is a poet, and she wrote a poem called The Journey, in which she writes, one day you finally knew what you had to do and began, determined to do the only thing you could do, determined to save the only love you could save. Well, that day came for me too. When I finally decided to save the only life I could save. Mine. What nobody tells us, though, is how difficult it is to get back on your feet again. I was lucky. In the last 3 months of being in this relationship, I also got a 3-month contract with Mitzi. And that was enough to remind me of the woman I once was. There's a quote from Lala Delia. I don't know who she is, but I love the quote. She says, she remembered who she was and the game changed. Now you see, the predator knows this. If I remember who I am, not only does the game change, but the game stops. And so the predator's whole modus operandi is to systematically help you to forget who you are. Worse still, stops you from ever discovering who you are. In the case of child abuse, for example. That that child doesn't have a chance to ever discover who he or she is. So if it's so difficult for me with my self-help tools and my therapy skills in the last 2 years to get back on my feet again, can you imagine just how difficult it is for the uneducated woman, or the mother, or the child, or the person without any support to leave an abusive marriage? No wonder some of the abused women, even months or years after they left the villager, will come back to him, or find themselves in repeated patterns of abusive relationships. Why? Because they don't know how to find back to themselves. And so in September 2018, my brother lent me his 4x4 bucky, and I went into the Namib Desert on my own solo journey. I said, I need to find myself again. And I was just outside Windhoek, and I found this little donkey car, and I stopped the car. And I said to myself, I said, now that you've said no to this violence, what now? What is your yes to life? And I spent the next 2 days in the solo journey in the desert, trying to work through what now. And I'm not going to go through all the detail, but there was a great sense of guilt and shame in me. Guilt because now I could no longer support my daughter financially, and I will probably be dependent on her financially for the rest of my life. But I also recognize my neediness and my dependency, and I recognize how I had everything, but I insisted that I wanted a man to complete me. I was not enough for myself. We need to really start to look at that. But then, in that desert, I realized, what is this? That for generations we are told, you need a man to complete you. Or men believe they cannot function without a woman. Watch them when their wives die. Watch how quickly they get into another relationship. We have got this myth going on in our brains. Anyway, so I went through many of the things, but I discovered for myself finally that I was angry, not so much at him, but angry at myself. And anger was eating me up, and resentment was eating me. And I started to work with compassion, and I started to find what is compassion about, and compassion for self. What would that mean? And that finally said, compassion for ourselves first. My story is by no means the worst at all. I was sitting at the social worker's office outside the court waiting for my interdict. And I heard stories in that line of women that was unbelievable. And I saw the physical injuries to that woman that I was spared. But one thing I know is no matter the context, whether it's sexual abuse, whether it's workplace abuse, it doesn't matter the context. This play between the predator and the victim goes down the same way. I also realize that each one of us is given our challenges in life. Your challenge may be very different to my challenge. I met this dark-sided man late in my life. It was a huge challenge for me. But yours may be retrenchment or financial problems or losing a loved one. Could be losing many loved ones in the stream of grief that you're sitting in. Whatever your challenge, I do understand one thing now, and that is, it is very important how we respond to our individual challenges, how we get up, and that we get up. And that's why I like the quote, and I'm ending off with this. When you are in a dark place, you sometimes tend to think you've been buried, but perhaps you've been planted. And then the final quote. I am blooming from the wound where I once bled. Now this is a journey to get there and authentically be able to say, I am blooming from the wound where I once bled. That's a journey, but it seems to me that life insists that each one of us will make this journey somehow so that we all can finally say, we are blooming from the wounds where we once bled. And this is our yes to life. Yeah. This brings me to the end of what I wanted to share.